companies Anadolu-Efes. The aim of this project is to analyze financial situation and performance of Anadolu-Efes. While determining the financial ratios, we constructed a financial statement and income statement through data that we collected from the internet. Anadolu-Efes is a beer producer and non-alcoholic beverage producer bottler with geography that covers Turkey, Russia, CIS countries, Europe, Central Asia, and Middle East. It's continuing its journey to become a global company. Anadolu-Efes started its production and sales operation in Turkey in 1969. Right now, it's fifth biggest beer manufacturer in Europe and 11th in the world. If you look at performance measures, it can be seen that market value added is relatively low compared to industry ratios. Market value added in 2019, it's approximately minus 20 million. In 2018, it was around minus 18 million. In 2017, it was around minus 13 million. For example, in industry in 2017, market value added was around 2,454.77 TL, and it's really high compared to ratio of Anadolu-Efes. Considering market to book ratio, it decreased 2017 to 2019, and it's relatively low compared to industrial ratios. For example, in 2018, it was 0.12, but in the industry it was 2.42 TL.
According to profitability measures that we have conducted calculations of return on assets, return on equity, return on capital, and operating profit margin. In terms of evaluating Anadolu-Efes' condition over 3 years, it is shown that within 3 years, its return on assets have been fluctuating. Especially in 2018, it went to negative numbers just like the industry average. We can say that in the 2018, management has started to be inefficient at using its assets to generate earnings. In 2017, Anadolu-Efes dropped behind the industry averages that may be resulted due to a need for a long-term investment to catch up industry. Another ratio that demonstrates Anadolu-Efes' place in the sector is that operating profit margin, where in all 2 years, company dropped behind the industry. Within those 3 years, Anadolu-Efes reacts completely different when we compare to the industry. When the industry has reached its peak, Anadolu-Efes reached its lowest value. That may be resulted due to Anadolu-Efes started to make investment in 2017 that it could not start to generate higher profits from these investments yet. Although industry averages shown that within the years between 2016 and 2017, operating profit margin has increasing for like 12 times at its own value, approximately. When we consider return on equity ratio, it becomes harder to make comparison with the industry because it involves how much companies pay dividends, so how much their equity has changed. However, in terms of 3 years period, Anadolu-Efes' equity has declined. When we come to the efficiency ratios, it is said to be Anadolu-Efes is very successful at collection period, which tells in how much days Anadolu-Efes is able to collect its receivables like suppliers. There, it's above the industry in all 3 years. In industry, collection is done in around 39 days. However, Anadolu-Efes collect within 37 days till 2019. Anadolu-Efes will be able to pay its debts as well, since it can collect from their suppliers. It is also important to collect from receivables because of the time value of money principle. A firm loses more money the longer it takes to collect on its sales. When we come to days in inventory ratio, it is said to be it takes every 47 to 48 days to turn its inventory into sales, which corresponds to the company is more efficiently and frequently selling off its inventory, which means rapid turnover leading to potential for higher profits. When we look at the assets to turnover ratio, it is said to be Anadolu-Efes is above the industry. The higher the asset turnover ratio, the better the company performance, since higher ratios imply that the company is generating more revenue.
The leverage ratios are important given that companies rely on a mixture of equity and debt to finance their operations. And knowing the amount of debt held by a company is useful in evaluating whether it can pay its debts off as they come due. When we are comparing long-term ratios of Anadolu Efes over time, it is said to be there had been a little decrease, which means their equity becomes a little bit more powerful and their long-term debts continue to decrease. However, it is not enough to look at only Anadolu Efes performance over time. It is going to be more relevant and understandable if we make comparison with the industry averages. And it is shown that Anadolu Efes is not doing very well, that their equity is not powerful compared to industry averages. Because the lower long-term ratio, the possible to finance with equity instead of long-term debt. When it comes to total debt ratio, if total debt ratio greater than 1 indicates that a company has more debt than the assets. Meanwhile, a debt ratio less than 1 indicates that a company has more assets than debt. When we look at the Anadolu Efes data, total debt ratio is less than 1, which is good for Anadolu Efes. However, when we look at the industry averages, Anadolu Efes seem to be less powerful with respect to liquidate their debts. Typically, liquidity ratios can be defined as measures showing companies' ability to pay a debt obligation. It can be accepted that the most common liquidity type ratio is current ratio. It is calculated by dividing current assets to current liabilities. Meanwhile, current assets are cash, accounts receivable, inventory, and other assets that is expected to be cash in a year. Current liabilities are accounts payables, wage, taxes payables, and current portion of long-term debt. The ratios that are greater than 1 shows that firm is able to pay its debts, and it shows their assets are larger compared to debts. There are the industry averages. Industry averages are larger than Anadolu Efes currently, which means industry is more likely to pay off its debts easily. When it comes to quick ratio, which is different from current ratio by not adding inventory into account, since it requires longer time to convert inventories into liquid cash. When we look at the numbers of quick ratios, Anadolu Efes have higher rate than industry averages. As a result, the last ratio in liquidity ratio is cash ratio. Cash ratio is said to be nearly same in 2017. However, in 2017, there is a huge difference between industry averages and Anadolu Efes. Anadolu Efes has a huge rate that its cash and marketable securities are not sufficient to finance their operations.
When we look at the growth measures of Anadolu Efes, it's said to be that there have been a sudden decline in sustainable growth rate in 2019. When we compare the dividend payout ratios of Anadolu Efes with the industry average, we can say that the company did not pay enough dividend according to their equity as much as the companies in the industry. This could be analyzed that Anadolu Efes reinvesting their earnings for longer-term projects or investments. Where the question of providing a long-term credit to the firm comes, the growth measures and long-term measures are crucial. The least dividend payout ratio belonged to 2019, and this shows Anadolu Efes becoming incapable of doing investment and stands its growth around 5%. When we combine these analyses with leverage ratios, since Anadolu Efes is doing not well on long-term debt ratio and long-term debt to equity ratio compared with the industry average, times interest earned ratio is a measure of a company's ability to honor its debt payments. If a lender sees a history of generating consistent earnings, the firm is in a better position to make principal and interest payments on time, which is in the case of Anadolu Efes. As a result, if we were a loan officer, we would not provide a long-term credit to Anadolu Efes.